Good evening, everyone. Hope you are doing well. This is our third session of the AI series. It's all about Python. Dr. Nawal, are we ready to start?
Maria, could you enable me?
Yes, I did.
So welcome to our third session. This is part 2. So we are going to talk today about some Python basics. As I said last time, when I want to talk about Python, I will not explain programming. I will only explain what is different between Python language and other programs. So I expect that every one of you knows how to program any other language. Just any other language would be okay. So in this chapter, we are going to have a little introduction to what Python is, who created it, some basics of Python programming. We're going to talk about data visualization and data structures, lists, tuples, and dictionaries. We're going to see basic loops and conditions. And we're going to talk at the end about some Python libraries that we are going to use later on and what Python libraries are and what their importance is. So as an introduction to Python, Python is what we call an open source software. This means it is free for everyone to use. It was created by somebody called Guido van Rossum in Amsterdam, but the important thing of it is that he created this during his Christmas vacation. This means a maximum of 2 weeks. So if Guido was able to create Python in 2 weeks, what could I expect of each one of you with this Corona quarantine be able to do? So it was created in 1989. I leave the question for you to answer to yourself. Python is what you call a general purpose language. So it's not a dedicated programming language. However, because we have plenty of machine learning libraries that are downloadable to Python, they are readable in Python, and they are free to download as well, like TensorFlow. This makes Python very famous in machine learning. Python supports what we call object-oriented programming and function-based programming, the two different types of programming available. Python is also what we call scalable. So if you have to do some code in C and implement it in Python, you could. This would help you make some of the functions move faster, execute very fast. And if you want to write some code that you don't want anybody to break, you can write it in C and implement it in Python. PEP8 is a standard developed by the Python creators to improve the readability. This means how to write the code. It doesn't make the program function better, but it makes it more readable. This means debuggable and transportable from one programmer to the other. And if you're really interested in this, I will communicate the link at the end of this session. This is the PEP8 link, how to write a pretty code in Python. Some basics in Python programming. You use the hash to comment out a line if you want to put a comment. And if you want to comment out a part, you use the 3 quotes. You could use single quotes, double quotes, it depends. You can use both. Multiple statements on one line are separated by a semicolon. So you could put multiple statements on the same line so that it looks smaller, so that you read it well. So you could separate them by a semicolon. In Python, the variables do not need any type definition. So you do not have to declare the variables before you start using them. You just start using them. Python uses indentation. So instead of when you are using a function or any part, a condition, instead of using brackets to define wherever the function or whatever is going to stop, you just indent the part that is within the function. We are going to see it in the examples later on. One thing in Python, this is maybe particular because Python is openware. It's a free software. Python 2 and Python 3 versions are not compatible. So if you want to write a code, you have to first look for the version of Python that you will have to use. So we are going to look for the libraries that you need and check they are adaptable to which Python, because within Python 3 also you have different, we are up to Python 3.8 now. So you have to know which Python you need to use, and then you are going to create either an environment that we are going to see next session, or you download the Python version that you need, and then you download the libraries within this, or else your program will not function well, it will not work. One of the main differences that we usually talk about if you want to detect if your code is written for Python 2 or Python 3 is that in Python 2 you write print without parentheses, and in Python 3 you use parentheses. But this is not the reason why we do need this, how to detect the code, because if you are looking in the internet, you're searching for codes, you can find plenty of them. When you implement them, you try to implement them, many of them will not work. Mainly it is because of this compatibility issue. It could be because the code itself is not good, because some people would post codes and they don't always verify their codes, or when they're posting them they have some typos, but it usually is from the compatibility issue. Data visualization is how to see an output. So this is basic. You could print a variable with print x between parentheses. I'm using Python 3. Print a string, so print parentheses quotes. Print a combination of the two. I can say the output is, and then comma, and then I put a variable in here, so I get the value of the variable. A very basic program. So I have in here a sample program. It adds two numbers. Number one is 1.5, number two is 6.3. Then I have the sum is I transform the numbers to a floating number. This is how I would do it. So I'm doing the sum of the two digits, and then I want to display them. So I have three different ways to display the output, and all of them are going to give the same result. So I say the sum of braces 0 and 1 is 2, and then I say dot format after I close the quotations, and then I put number 1, number 2, and the sum. Another way is to, I think this is the simplest one, the sum of comma, number 1, comma, and then I put quotes again, and comma, number 2, and then I put quotes again is the sum. Or I put here the type of, so I put percent, and I put the type of the value I want. So R is for real number, D is for integer, so I want the answer to be displayed as an integer. And then when I finish, sum of R and R is D. Then I put percent, number 1, number 2, and sum. And then I close it. And then I get the sum of 1.5 and 6.3 is the result. That's 7.8. But since I here have an integer, instead of 7.8, it's going to give 8. And for the other two, it's going to give the value as it is. Elisa, do you have any results, poll results, for the questions we have asked to our participants?
Yes, sure. I will be sharing them right now. Here we have the results of the first question, which is if we know the difference between lists and tuples in Python. We have 4 who answered yes and no. There are 6 who answered that they don't know the difference. As for the second question, which was if anyone has already used Python programming languages, the answers have flipped. 6 have answered yes and 4 have answered no. So I would like everyone to Maybe next time, make sure that you check your emails for the polls we are sending by email. Make sure to answer them before the sessions.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you for those who answered. Yes, it is good to know the audience I'm talking to. So the second question is just for me to know if you are familiar with Python, so that I, in the later sessions, see how to treat the examples. Anyways, thank you for answering. The difference, we are going to see it right now between lists and tuples. Tuples are a special kind of lists. So in here, the lists are defined between brackets. They are separated by commas. So I can create in here a list of, in this case, they are strings, so they are names, 4 different names. This is why we put them between quotations. And lists, they are very flexible. So we have a lot of manipulations that we could do. So we could add elements, we can remove elements. We can use what we call a method. A method is every time you are going to use within a, in here, baby names is the name of our list. And then I put a dot and I put this, we call it a method and we do not call it a function. When I call a function, it's like print baby names. I'm calling an independent function. When I call it in here, this is something that is applied particularly to the list baby names, and in Python we always call these methods. And within the libraries you have a lot of methods. So a method to these is extend. So we're going to extend, this means elongate. We are going to see an example just next on it, and pop, for example. So in here we have a creation of a list. We have extended the list with 2 names. So if we print this, we are going to have 2 additional names. If I want to find the position of, for example, Alicia, so I'm going to say ask for the index of Alicia. It's going to give me 1 because the index starts with 0. If I want to remove a value from the list, I can say pop and it will remove the value. And here we have the reference. So if you go to data camp, you are going to find a lot of examples for beginners. It will help you a lot to start testing in Python. We can copy this to, no, I cannot copy this. Now I have another example that you are going to see in the application. So we have a lot of functions that we can do and methods on lists. I just chose these because they are very basic. They are like the length, the maximum, and the minimum values of a list. List methods. So I have series of lists in here methods, but practically we have many, many more. Append, this means add an object to the list. Extend, it extends the list, and within the example in here I'm going to show you the difference between append and extend. Count, this means it's going to count the times of appearance of an object within the list. So I put the object inside and it's going to tell me how many times I can see it, how many times it is repeated. Index, we just saw it. It's going to give me the position of the object within the list. And I could insert at a certain index an element, and pop it's to remove an element. If I say list of index -1, in Python we can put negative indexes in the lists. This means it's counting backwards from the last element to the first element. So if I want to remove the last element, I would say pop the list of -1. So I want to try out this example, but first I want to explain it. I have first list, which has 3 elements, a number, and then I say list 2 is equal to list 1. Then I print the value of list 2 in here, and then I extend list 1, add a number to it, number 2, so I add these 3 values, 4 values in here. And then I print the list 1. I print the length of list 1 and the maximum value. And after that, I print list2. If you go back to the program, I have not changed anything to list2. I just at the beginning defined list2 as being equal to list1. And then I'm going to use the append function to check the difference between the extend and the append. Well, moving to this one, you are seeing a different window, right? Are you seeing my spider window?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So if I move to this is exactly the same example. And I want to run it. So to begin with, this is a spider. This is one of the IDEs that we use in Python programming. There are several. There's Jupyter, Spider. You can use directly, but I'm using in here Spider. And it gives you the version of Python that you are using. So this is Python 3.7. So I run my program. So if you look in this, here are the results. I have list2 initial value is 1.52 and 3, just I have defined it. List in here, so the value of list1, because list2 was equal to list1. So list1, I have extended it by these 4 values, so I can see the additional 4 values in here. Its length is 7 values. The maximum value is 9. Then I just print list2. And as you see, list2 has changed with list1. This is because within basic Python, if you put list2 is equal to list1, it does not create a new variable and call it list2 and give it an initial value, which is the same as list1. It just creates a new index to the same place in the memory, which refers to list1. This is why if you put list2 is equal to list1 like this, it means this, whether you use list2 or list1, it is always the same value. It's not just in a particular point. So this is different in other Python, in other programming languages, so you have to take care of it when you are programming. The second thing I wanted to show you is the extend has added the values to the same line, whereas append, because it takes one number, so it's going to add one element. If I tell it append number 2, it takes it as one element and it adds it to the list. So instead of adding the 3 values at the same level, this is another list within the list. So it took it in a different way. Depends on what you want. So it kept number 2 as it is, and it appended it to my list. Tuples. The difference between lists and tuples are that tuples do not change. So first of all, we define them between parentheses instead of brackets. They cannot be modified once initialized. Why? Because sometimes we need to initialize in Python some data that, like reference data, I do not want to modify it. And I'm afraid that within the programming, some bad manipulation of the program, I change my original data. And I do not want to. Whenever I do not want to change at all my original data, I use a tuple instead of a list. So when I want to define the elements of the tuple, I have to define them at the beginning. So it is a different data that I am going to use. And this data is a data that, as I just said, I don't want it to be changed. Whereas when I use a list, I can manipulate it. It would be more flexible, and I can manipulate it as I like. So in tuples, you have all the, you have much less manipulation functions with respect to lists. Dictionaries are very practical because in a dictionary, you are going to define the values with an index and value. So in here, you put braces, you put in here the index. So in here, it's the key. So the key is brand, and then the value is Ford. So whenever I want to call the model of the car, for example, I don't have to know at which index it was saved. It has a name for the index. So instead of having indexes that are numbers that are meaningless to the user, I have indices that are these keys, and I am going to use them by the word, and this is a part which is practical. So you can always use lists within the dictionaries or tuples within the dictionaries, or you can use lists within the tuples. So they are developed, and you can develop them more. I'm not going to talk a lot about loops. I already said that if I want to define a loop, I will not put anything to show where it ends. So this is an example in here. I have the while loop, I is equal to 1 while I less than 6. You have a colon in here to define the beginning of the while loop. And you have an indentation to say that all of these lines are within the while loop. Once you stop the indentation, it means you are out of the while loop. This is in Python. Break is going to exit the function before the loop finishes. So it's while I is less than 6, print I. If I is equal to 3, break. This means it will never go beyond 3. This is a very simple example just to show the use of this function. In for loops, I can define the for loop like for I is equal to 1 to 10. This is a range. For I is equal to 1, as long as I is less than 10, increment I. Or I can go in here, define a list. And for I in A, and then I go and put all the commands, and the loop is going to go from 1 to 3 values, so it's going to loop 3 times. The conditions that we use are double equal for the equal, not equal this one. It's always also is different between Python 2 and Python 3. And less than or equal, greater than or equal. Another example here, I consider it interesting. It's a prime number checker. So it's going to check if my number is prime or not. This is another example that I am going to show you on my software. So I choose a number. And here I can choose a fixed number, or I can input a number. So I can go input, integer, parentheses input, and then I put a certain text. So it's going to display the text, and I'm going to choose my input during the execution. To begin, if number is greater than 1, I am going to do the check. If number is not, else, it's directly going to print on the screen variable. This is number is not a prime number because 0 and 1 are not prime numbers. So for I is in range between 2 and the number. If the number divided, this is the remainder, is equal to 0. So if I divide number by I and the remainder is equal to 0, I say this number is not a prime number. And then I have another text, I times number double divide by I to give the value is, and I give the answer. And then I get out of the loop, because once I find that the number is not a prime number, it's useless to continue looping and then getting answers that are meaningless. If I do not find that the remainder is equal to 0, then I continue. I increment, and then I loop again. So at the end, if I get the value that go up to I is equal to number minus 1, so to the last value, I will detect that it was not divisible by any number, so it is a prime number. We're going to see this. So this is the same program. And in here, I have asked Python to give me, so this is the text, enter a number. So just any number. And then it's divisible by 2. So I can go for, in the wrong place. So we can have the execution of the program. In here, it's detecting that I do not have a prime number. So I have 3 times 7 is 21, and 2 times 2,827 is the number that I gave first. Python libraries. Python libraries are what makes Python so used and so important. So when you want to use a library, just have to import it. Should I say import, for example, TensorFlow, because we are going to use it in the following sessions. Import Keras, because we are going to use it. I can have NumPy. NumPy has a lot of mathematical functions, matrix and array functions. TensorFlow is particular to machine learning, and Keras is advanced machine learning protocols. So instead of you programming your machine learning step by step, you just have lines of code that are going to do a big part. So everything that we explained last time, we're going to see that you don't even need all the details that we used last time. We are going to go, for example, if I want a neural network, I just have one line of code that's going to ask for a neural network, and then it's going, you have to put the, what we have called the hyperparameters inside. So we are going to see these later on. We are going to talk a little bit about NumPy and matplotlib library, because these are the functions that are very often used. So NumPy, so I just have to import it first. I can define an array. I can define, for example, an array of a range 10, a ranged array. So I have a value in here. So this looks like a list, but in NumPy it is defined as an array of numbers. So it has a different function. It is additional to whatever I have already explained in basic Python. So it's different. These do not exist in the basic Python, so they are additional. Plotting functions, so I begin, this is Python plot within the matplotlib library to plot the basic functions. We have different sub-libraries in matplotlib library. So in here I want to plot 4 values, which just shows indices and the 4 values, and I can label the image, and at the end I will have to say plt show so that I see it. So the first lines I have defined my plot, but I did not display it at the end, and only at the end I display it. And something else, when I want to import libraries that have a long name, so instead of every time saying matplotlib.pyplot and then I say the different functions, when I say as PLT, PLT is the reduced, if you want, name for all of this. And it's always used in Python because we are going to all the time use it within the program so that we reduce the writing. So this is the end of this part. I am going to later on talk about the TensorFlow and Keras library in a session alone, because this is the objective of the session, to work on machine learning. So I did not include them in this session because I want to give them a whole session. And the last session will be applications and hands-on application on examples from using TensorFlow and Keras. So you have 2 long sessions on these libraries with work. I would like that you would do them alone. So we are going to send them in later sessions. Elisa?
Thank you so much, Doctor, for this session. Everyone, if you have any question, go ahead and ask. The doctor is available. She can answer all your questions. Don't hesitate to ask, okay?
Okay, good evening, Doctor.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine.
Okay. First of all, thank you
Thank
for
you.
the session. It was really nice, although I got a little bit late, but I didn't skip the initials. So I just wanted to...
You were able to follow? Did I go too fast on the material?
Well, I actually am like studying a little Python in my free time, but I got to the pandas libraries and modules, and besides that, everything here is a little bit familiar with me. So maybe
Okay. Okay. I did not talk about pandas in this session. Yes.
yeah. I just wanted to ask about the range function, and I know it's about it's something. It's a function in the main Python library or the module, but coming from a C or C++ background, it seems a little bit odd because we used to like just do the for loops with, I mean, the incrementation of each loop. But now we're just using the range function. And I just wanted to ask you if you could like elaborate more on this one.
Let me go back to it first. You're talking about this slide? Garen, are you still seeing my screen?
Yes, I am.
So you are talking about the last one in here?
Yeah.
So it's just like if you say for I going from 1 to 3, but if within the loop you are going to use I, because sometimes within the loop I use, for example, if it is a number, an index, we use it in the function. I say y is equal to y plus I, so every time I'm incrementing a number, it just gets a certain list. If I want to display the name, if you want to say, for example, the name of the food is, and every time you are going to change the word within it, instead of creating two lists or two variables, one for the index and another one that you are going to use inside the loop, you just choose it like this. So you define your names of foods within a list, and then you go looping around it if you want. I didn't try to program in here on this, but you can just try it. It could sometimes make your program nicer and easier to read. This is why they give us different options.
Oh, okay. So basically, the range function is just incrementing between the different elements of a list or a table.
It is going from one element to the other. So it's going on the index, it's looping on the index of A.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
If anyone else has questions, go ahead and ask. Don't hesitate. If we can all open our videos to take a photo at the end of this session as we all ask questions. Doctor, we have a question.
So someone is asking about, yes.
Yes, about plotting of the graph.
Well, I went a little bit fast on this, but it's in here. This is functions of plotting are not within basic Python, the first note. And here we have the, this is a basic linear plot. You can plot x comma y, it's the same function. So you could put PLT plot and then define indices in an x variable and whatever values you have in a y variable, and just plot x comma y, it can give you this. And then you say y label, x label, you want a grid, you don't want a grid. So you all put all the functions below each other. Just at the end, after defining everything, you say plt show. It's going to show you the plots. It doesn't always show it in the same place. It depends on your IDE and how it works and the options you have. It can show it in a different window. It can show it in a pop-up window, but it will show you a graph. I think this was the last question because we have less than 1 minute. I will stop the screen so that I appear with you. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you so much, Dr. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for participating in session 3. We will see you next week in session 4. Make sure to check your emails for the recording of this session and check your emails for the announcement of session 4 and the links. Basically, just keep checking your emails from us.